Hello, and welcome to Conflict Analysis, Resolution, and Peace Studies lectures. This video is the second in a series of videos on narrative praxis, and this one covers externalization. Externalization is, I would say, a key tool in the toolkit of a narrative practitioner. And it covers the issue where a problem is so linked with a person or group of people that it's hard to discuss it, because any discussion of the problem leads back to that person or group, and they can feel attacked, they can become unresponsive in a mediation or facilitation type setting, and it can be very difficult to then move forward with any sort of talks to increase understanding about the problem. A friend of mine who's an ombudsman and does a lot of mediations for the Defense Intelligence Agency said he constantly has to talk to people about how they need to attack the issues and not the people. And externalization is a really good way to talk about issues without focusing on the person or making the person feel attacked or defensive. Because what you do is you remove the issue from inside the person, and you personify it, you talk about it. So instead of talking about, somebody's unwillingness, like, why is this person unwilling, or why are you unwilling? It's, so when did this unwillingness come about? And you talk directly about the unwillingness and ask questions about the unwillingness as if it's a separate thing. You have taken it out of the person, and everybody's now looking at the unwillingness in the middle of the discussion, being turned around and poked and prodded and asked about, so that the unwillingness can be talked about without any sort of stagnation, because it's too connected to a person. Now everybody's focused directly on the issue, and they can work with it in a different way, because it can be very difficult to work with issues that are so embedded inside even a group. If you have two groups discussing something, it can end up feeling like one group is attacking the other, and this is a very good way to pull that apart, to reframe. It's a very good reframing technique. And these issues often get, like I said, personified, they get animated, they get described, and people get into describing them, and they're often really excited to talk about them in a different way. And they become more malleable, and people can reflect on them more. In his book, and I do apologize for how it's backwards, but the citation will be in the description. In his book, Maps of Narrative Practice, Michael White mentions a lot and goes really in depth with some issues that he's covered in his counseling, and he breaks down and describes step by step externalization and going into different planes of action and of feeling, and it's a very interesting read if you're interested in externalization. And I wanted to share with you an example from my own practice. We were paired up in one of the classes that I took, and we were talking about issues with our partner. And my partner had an issue that wasn't directly hers. It was one that a family member of hers had, but she was very worried about it. And so I chose to externalize that idea of worry, and I began to ask about the worry. Like, when did the worry come about? When does the worry creep up on you? And then we began to try to talk about the worry that way. And when we talked about the worry and how it nagged at her, we began to talk about how it's similar to children pulling at her skirt. They want her attention, and she tries to give it to them. She tries to give her attention to the worry, but that doesn't help. She can't fix the worry. And we began to talk about her different experiences with the worry when it comes, how she feels about it, how she just wishes that she could help the children who are tugging at her skirt, but they're not her children. They're somebody else's children, and she can't tell that person how to take care of those children. The children both reflecting the issue itself and the worry, even though the direct issue we were discussing had nothing to do with children. It was the best way to articulate her feelings about it because she cares for this person and she cares about this issue, but she recognized that it wasn't her issue to deal with. And some of the things that we went through were looking at the intricacies of it, and you can look at the actions that worries have around them, and the actions that worries do. Like, it's a way to look at agency in a different way as well, because you can take the agency and move it around in the discussion. You can give it to the worry, and then you can give it back to the people asking what they do about the issue, in this case about the worry, and how they can interact with it, and how that worry has impacted them, and how that worry has impacted the other people in the conflict. And it's also a really great idea to work with it because it's so much easier to have people work on their own problems and find solutions through externalization. A lot of the times, people will want to give advice and they'll want to help, and by people I mean practitioners. They'll want to give advice and they'll want to help, but helping people by directly giving advice often isn't the most effective way to help them, and it can also backfire if it doesn't work for them. My friend, the Ombudsman, also thinks that it's important, in his work especially, it can be a liability if he gives people bad advice. So he works on talking with them, and he might have a solution in mind, but he can't give it, and he wants to talk with them until they come to either that solution on their own or another one that they believe will be practical for them. So one thing that it does is it allows people to take that journey into finding their solution without somebody else handing it to them in a way that could be problematic and doesn't help them learn to work through the issue. Because the more that they work on solving their own problem or working with their own issue, the more people learn about how to do that in the future and how to reproduce that either in relation to that specific problem or in relation to another problem that crops up. In the next video, I will give you a more metaphorical look at externalization. So, see you soon.